there's many ways to go about it. I'm going to share what worked best for me, and hopefully there's a takeaway for you. And then I do talk fast. My sister is actually on here, Stephanie, so she can vouch for that. The Canadian on the call. But anyways, if I go too fast on something, don't hesitate to ask me to explain, but I am more than willing to Skype or have a Google Meet with any of you later, and where I can actually share my screen if you have any specific questions. So if there's something you want more time with, you can book that with me anytime later. Okay, so be sure, like Chelsea suggested, if you would like to introduce yourself in the chat, you can put your Twitter handle. There's a lot of people on this call. This is the most we've had, so it's very exciting. Okay, so I'm going to get started here. And oops. My computer is not the fastest machine. My really good computer from the school has no camera, which is really funny considering how much I use a camera. But anyways, so bear with me if there's a delay. Okay, so today I'm going to go over Google Classroom, and these are the things I'm going to focus on. Organizational strategies that I used. My goal is to keep students informed, empowered, and self-sufficient, and reduce unnecessary frustrations in students and parents. So very quickly, when this spring, when I did remote learning, I tried very hard to get everything the students needed to be on their own. Now they were 10 and 11, but I do think even younger students are capable of being independent if it's organized well. My goal was to reduce the stress from parents, that if the child knew exactly what they were supposed to do, where to find the work, parents were more likely to work with me because it was one less thing they had to worry about. So that's where I'm coming from. In everything that I did, it was to make it simple for the students. And then develop a consistent and predictable system. So when I started doing this, especially in the spring, I would design something and then I realized, okay, well, now I got to keep this because the students are used to whatever I did and I'm going to stay with this. Now I use Google Classroom when I have students in my classroom, so they were very used to my setup already, which made it a lot easier than some teachers had to jump into Google Classroom for the first time and then we're trying to use it with their students. This is what I'm going to present today. I'm going to talk about how I use Google Slides, then Google Docs within Google Classroom to keep students organized. And then I'll talk about Google Classroom and then I'll open it up for question and answer. So Google Slides, there's a lot of different ways you can go about this, but I like using Google Slides to make posters. I'm a visual person. I feel that if you make something eye-catching, parents and students are more likely to look at it. And so using Google Slides, I found it easy to make text box with color, add images. So this is an example of something I made early on, and I had a Google Hangout Meet schedule. And why I like Google Slides is because I can make the schedule and then I could turn it into a photo. And I posted that photo on Facebook. Now, I don't personally like Facebook, but I caved for remote learning because a lot of my students' parents were on there. So I made a private group to communicate with the parents, which very much went against what I was willing to do months ago. But I would take something like this, turn it into a photo, and post it on that Facebook page for the parents. I could email parents a copy of this, and I also posted it on Google Classroom. So I had this schedule, and then sometimes I had to change something, especially towards the end of May. And I would go in here. I didn't have to recreate anything. I could duplicate the slide and change a few things up. Like maybe I got rid of an afternoon chat on Thursday. I could just fix that up and make it very easily. So I found this to be easy to make and eye-catching enough. The students knew what schedule to look for. It didn't look like anything else we used in class. It was very much a standalone thing. They knew where to find. This was the schedule, and they could predict when we were going to meet. If you're wondering what the Yukon, Iliamna, Denali, Kodiak, that's a side note, but we have houses in my class, so all the students are divided into groups. which I call houses. And that's a whole other professional development. But I would call the students on those days were the houses of their houses, just so there's no confusion there. Okay, so in Google Slides, it's a little hard to see, but when you're in Google Slides, you can then export it or download it into an image. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that's a very simple thing to do. You can also make it a PDF to make it easier to email to parents. And like I said, it's easy to share on Facebook, text, or email. I also use Google Slides. This is an example of something I did on Google Slides. We had some goals that were for families maybe that wanted to do their own thing. They didn't really want to follow the day-to-day schedule. And so I gave them some suggestions. This was early on in remote learning. But you could do this kind of thing in your classroom with students physically there. You could use this format. So I had all the subjects and I suggested things that they could do. Again, it was really easy to make on Google Slides. And then I made the first page and duplicated it. And then I had the second page. Like I didn't have to, I just had the text box and just changed the wording. So my friend who's a teacher was like, oh my goodness, this looks like a lot of work. It really wasn't a lot of work because once you make a text box on Google Slide, you can choose the font and then you can copy that text box and just paste it, change the color if you want. So I did not spend very long on this at all. And when I was talking to students, if I phoned them and wanted to help them figure out what to look at, I could say, look at the yellow box that says life skills. So it was somewhat color coded. Here's another thing that I made on Google Slides. This was a learning schedule. Again, you can see the date, but it had check boxes. And again, my favorite thing about Google Slides is that I can make it pleasing to the eye. I can use different colors and it's really easy. Once I made day one, I just copied and pasted the text box for day one and then changed it a little bit for day two and then day three, day four. None of this took very long. If I want to use this fall, I can change the date and I can change some of the things that we're going to work on. So I have a template that I can use forever that didn't take me that long to make. This is something for the Alaskans on here that I learned at ASTE from Alice Keeler when she came a couple of years ago. But you can use Google Slides and change the page setup. So it's 7.5 times 10, and you have to go under custom. So I took a little picture there. Page setup, custom, and then you'll get a page. Your slide actually looks more like a document. And again, I just really like, I really like color. Obviously, I have a lot of text on here, but I was making, well, a daily checklist and then some writing prompts. And I was posting these on Google Classroom, but I was also turning them into images that I can post on Facebook. And then I could also turn them in easily to PDFs and put them on or email them to parents. These were, basically they were both templates. So I changed the writing prompts up. All I would do is go in and leave this slide and then duplicate it, like make a copy and then change the writing prompt. Same with the schedule. And I color coded it by subject. So you're probably wondering, well, this is a lot. How did students even know what to do? I didn't give them all of this at the same time. This is different at different times through remote learning. But I'll show you where I posted them in Google Classroom. I think the takeaway from Google Slides is it's not hard to make. You can make them pretty and color coded, which makes it easier for students to navigate, and they're eye-catching to send to parents to grab their attention. It's not just a black and white document. Okay, and here's another example of something I made. Easy to duplicate. I kind of went over this already. So I'm going to just stop sharing or go back to the screen for a second. Does anyone have any questions about Google Slides? We're going to talk about Google Documents in a second. Okay. And I didn't really get into I did not get into the how to work Google Slides, because it's more, this presentation's more on like how we use these tools to stay organized. But like I said, if you want specific help, I will gladly do that. Okay, oops, sorry. Okay. Okay, Google Docs. So I made a daily document, and why I did this is because students were getting lost. Okay, so you can organize your Google Classroom as really well, but you're likely going to have a child that is getting lost. So my theory was those are the students that are most likely to give up on remote learning, or even in a classroom, they're going to get frustrated. So I wanted to make sure that there was something as a backup. If they could not navigate Google Classroom, how could they access the information in the most simplest way? So every day I made basically an update. So 1-page document. And what I tried to do, and there's 2 examples here, is I tried to have links directly to the assignment, and I tried to outline the most current things that I may have just added to Google Classroom, and also any like a reminder. So May 4th, as you can see, there's a lot there. Well, that's because it's a Monday and it was the beginning of the week, so there was a lot of things I had to remind the students. Where if you look at the Earth Day one, there's really not as much material there. So I didn't have the same amount every day, but I would post these updated documents every single day on Google Classroom, so that if a child didn't know what to do, I would say, have you checked the daily document? And we'd work from there. Eventually, most students knew how to navigate through Google Classroom and what was expected of them, that they didn't have to rely on these. But I even had the link for our Google Meets. I had as much as I could on 1 page, that if the child was only looking at this, they'd still be successful. And I could easily email this to parents. So here's an example on April 7th. It's a little more simple, and that's honestly what I would prefer, because as you can see with your eyes, it's a lot easier to navigate this document. There's not as much talking on there. I think as the spring progressed, I got a little more desperate, like, please follow my directions, and started writing a whole lot more. I was still optimistic on April 7th. So each thing that you see here, like Canada Nearpod, is blue because it's a link. So the students could directly click on that and it would take them right to the assignment or the resource or whatever they needed to do. I also use Google Docs to make a checklist of all the assignments. Now, this looks super overwhelming. Please know this is for the entire spring. So we did challenges that were optional, and I inserted a photo of where they could find it on Google Classroom. So not only did I make this Google Doc, I tried to help them, hey, this is where it's located on Google Classroom. So that's one thing I will say, is I had to do a lot of verbal prompts and reminders at the beginning of the spring. Even though they had used Google Classroom in my classroom, like physical classroom, I still had to remind them where to find things. So I don't think you can ever stop doing that. Oops, sorry. Okay, so just to review how you insert links, when you go to insert, and there's a little thing that says link, and then it gives you can type the text and paste the link. And so this one here on May 6th, I had a lot of stuff. That's not really the best example because there's so much information, but there's lots of links there. It's really easy to put a link in. I used a lot of photos as well. So for this day, we had a visiting author. I wanted to make sure they saw that. So again, you insert image, upload from computer or Google Drive. But one thing to remember is I always chose this so that the text wrapped around it. And in some of my other examples, you saw that I used images. I guess one of the main motivating factors for me when I design something is, how am I going to get the students' attention? If they only saw this picture and were like, hey, that's Kevin Sylvester, Mrs. Davies always talks about this author. Oh, we better pay attention. If that's the only thing they got from it, at least it's something. Okay, so I'm going to go into Google Classroom. and talk about how I organize things. So I blocked my class code because I still have student names and work on there. So normally there's a class code there. There's stream and classwork. So I at first wasn't sure like what's stream and what's classwork. Luckily I went to ASTE and had the training on to post everything on classwork. So I've known this for a couple of years, but I was actually really shocked to hear that a lot of teachers were posting things in stream, and it's really not anyone's fault. It's even I was like confused a couple of years ago, like, or whenever this came out, because this is an update. Where are we supposed to post stuff? So I'm going to talk about stream first, and then I'll talk about classwork. Okay, stream I think of is a news feed. So I would post reminders, and this is an example of something. Again, on Monday, I was more apt to post a reminder on Monday that had a lot of information because it was the beginning of a week. So you can see I have the schedule. I had a Google Sheets, like a spreadsheet of assignments that they were trying to finish. And so I posted that on stream. All of the attachments here that you can see were also posted on classwork. So there's multiple places to find it, but I don't generally post much on stream. But like I said, on Mondays or whenever there was something really important, I would post on stream and classwork. So it's almost like a double post. But you really want to post the majority of your important work and assignments in under classwork. So here's another example, important announcements. So we had an author visiting. I really wanted to make sure the students tuned in. I wanted them to be familiar with him. And so I posted all these resources. And so that would be on stream because it's an announcement. So reminders, announcements. Now in my classroom, in my like normal classroom, when all of the students are together, I'm very much big on amplifying students' voice. So I really want students to make comments and questions, not just randomly talk. So I kept that on stream, meaning I allowed it. Now my husband teaches middle school, and he said he didn't allow that with his middle school classes, and that's fine. He had 70 students, not in one class, but I can understand why you might not want them just putting random things. But in my case, none of the students abused it. And you can see some of the examples. I finished the Witness Protection Program, which is a book. The next one, I put my speech in my spring folder. And then one of my favorites was, did any of you see the two whales? We followed them from my house to City Park to the Stikine, then near Mrs. Davies' house. A lot of students would share pictures of a fish they caught, or they went grouse hunting, or they did some artwork, or one student showed a picture of the landscaping they were doing at their house. And this to me kept the spirit of our normal classroom alive on stream. Now, if a student posted like, please call me so-and-so, then I would delete that and ask them not to post that. And so that's what I think my husband was trying to get away from, is the pointless comments there. In this case, like I said, most of my students didn't abuse it. And I could also respond to them on here. So a tip is set clear expectations for the students and communicate them with them, because I didn't want the stream to be abused and have all of these comments. It had to be relevant and not a whole lot of comments. It wasn't abused, like I said, for the most part. Keep it clean and organized. So if I did see comments, or maybe it's something I posted that was really not relevant anymore, like a reminder, then I deleted it and got it out of the stream, because just in case a student spent more time in the stream than I wanted to, I didn't want all this information in there that didn't need to be there. I got rid of old comments as well. So that didn't take me long. I did it maybe once a week. I made a point to go in there, kind of like I might with my email, clean it up, make sure there's not a whole lot of things in there. And I would move things to the top if they were really important. So let's say on Monday, I posted a lot of stuff to Google Classroom, when you post something, it will show up in Stream. Even if you didn't post it in Stream, it will just say like an assignment is added to classwork. And so let's say there was a whole lot of things posted and I really wanted the first thing to be the thing that caught the student's attention, then I would move that little notification to the top. So I think of this again as more of a news feed. It's not the main hub. Your students, in my opinion, should not live in Stream. Okay, now we're going to talk about classwork, which is different than Stream. My favorite thing about classwork is that you can organize everything into topics, which makes it a whole lot easier to navigate. So if you go to Google Classroom, and I might be able to show you mine, but right now we don't really need it. Anyways, if you look at all topics, you'll see I have all these topics: speeches, line tender, vocabulary, and so on. And so you can just click on the topic and it will take you directly to that part in classwork. So if you don't organize by topics, it is very hard, very challenging for the students to navigate through all of the things you've posted. I also used emojis to make them stand out a little bit more, and students love emojis. So you can see I use that. When you go to classwork, there's going to be a plus button that says create, and you can choose assignment, quiz assignment, question material, reuse, post, or topic. So that's where I made the topics. I would hit topic, and I was constantly updating that to make sure it was really easy for students to find things. I did call my students a lot, and so if they couldn't find something on the phone, I could tell them, okay, you're going to go to Google Classroom, go to classwork, click the topic vocabulary. Okay, do you see the 3 lists? And I could help them walk through just on the phone, and they were able to find what we were looking for. Okay, these are some of the things. I just want to show you an example on classwork. I had a section for schedule, lists, and logs. So some of the things I showed you at the very beginning as far as checklists and schedules and just, yeah, lots of organizational things. That there was a section just for that. I had a section just for my docs. Now it says hyperdocs, and I didn't want to go in and change all of that today, but they're really not truly a hyperdoc. A hyperdoc is way more interactive. I was just calling it that because all of the links were active, and I already showed you that in the presentation. But please know that a hyperdoc is more exciting than what I was doing and more beneficial for the students. Okay, math lessons. So my students all had a textbook, and so I was posting videos and also telling them what lesson to do and by the date. So that would be a whole section under classwork. So I would still use the same setup even if the students were in my classroom, because if they often the way I teach math is they have time to work on their own, and some students want to watch the video again, or perhaps are working on it at home. So just putting the daily lesson and then resources. Okay, I did daily challenges as well. And so I just wanted to show you that when you're in classwork, you can choose to do an assignment or material. So this would be an example of when I selected material. This wasn't an assignment they had to hand in. It was optional. And there's a whole lot of things here, but this was very popular. The students really, really liked talking about their future careers and thinking about what jobs they might have. So under material, you can add a whole lot of different links, and that would be something that I had under classwork. Okay, another way to help students not get lost on Google Classroom is using Flipgrid, and that's a whole other presentation, but I do use Flipgrid a lot. In remote learning, I made a video almost every day, and I hope no one watches those again because my hair was just wild. But anyways, I'm joking. But anyways, so I made a Flipgrid video almost every day, and my video was talking about what they had to do for the day. So a lot of the documents in the Google Slides that you saw, I made a video. So if someone didn't want to read all of that, they could just watch the video. So if they clicked on one of these days, they could get the link. I tried to keep the videos really short. And honestly, towards the end, I don't think students are really watching them as much anymore because they knew what to do. But at the beginning, they were definitely helpful. And I could email these out to parents as well. But that was a whole section under classwork, was just Flipgrid. Students also made Flipgrid videos, and so I could post them under this section. But in this particular section, it was me communicating to the students. If you're not familiar with Flipgrid, I'm assuming most of you are, but if not, no worries. It's a free platform in which you can make videos and collaborate with others. It's easy to add feedback. And yeah, anyways, okay. One of the things I did that worked out really well is I made a personal file for each student, which it's like a personal channel. So I had 22 students, and I made a file for each one of them. If you look at this, I blocked out their names, but you can see this student here, the file was only shared with one person. So this screen, this little snapshot here is what my screen looked like, but on their end, it would just show up just their folder. So they could submit work there. They could upload like an attachment, but I used it for them to communicate when they had a question without everyone seeing it. And what's interesting is the girl that had 28 comments didn't have a landline. Her mom and dad own a business, so she couldn't really use her cell phone. And so she communicated through her computer to me all the time. That's why you see 28 comments. Whereas there's one here with just 2. Well, that girl had her own cell phone and often texted me work. And now, just to let you know, I do live on an island and I do know my students' families very well. And it was an agreement with the parents, as long as it wasn't abused, students could text me. I know that's not for everyone, and especially if you're in a city, but just also, my daughter is in this class. These are her friends, but I've had the same rule for years. It's not about my daughter being in the class. But the main point of this is it was a private way for students to communicate. And some students didn't use it. Some students used it a lot. But it was a great way for kids to ask questions, because even though I called them every week, sometimes they were too shy on the phone to tell me, I don't know how to do this, or can you look at my speech and help me edit it? But they would put it on here. Okay, what's the difference between a material and assignment? So material is where I would post links, resources, directions, videos, and I use material a whole lot more, whereas my husband in his middle school class uses assignments a whole lot more. An assignment is where the students, you can post resources. You can see this little thing that says add, the little button. So you can do that, but you're going to give them any sort of assignment and then they can hand it in. And where it says points, you can put ungraded. You can have no due date, or you can put a due date. You can assign things just for a few students because there's a drop-down box where you can select students. And so I did use this, and it's really handy because when they hand it in, all their work is in one place. And moving forward, I plan to use assignments a whole lot more. You can also give them individual private feedback through an assignment, which is really nice. Okay. I quickly tried to find a student view of an assignment, what it looks like on their end. And I just took a screenshot of Alice Keeler's screen here. But they have a turn-in button, and then they can also revise it, and you can communicate with them back and forth. But it really is not hard for them to turn it in. It's once the students know how to do it, it's fairly simple. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing my screen in 1 second here, but I did want to say that there are lots of ways to use Google Classroom, and there's people that have way more knowledge and experience presenting about this and sharing their wisdom. So I made a Wakelet collection, which is like a bulletin board of resources. I just quickly did it today. I will probably add to it, and if any of you want to post some of your favorite people, I can add to it there. So it's for you. I will make sure the link is in the chat. But if you're wanting to learn more, there's so many resources out there that if you are curious or have more questions, basically it's at your fingertips for free. Okay, so I am going to stop presenting. Okay. So, okay. So I went through it pretty quickly, but would love to hear if you have used something differently, if you have questions, if you found something that worked, if you used it with how your child liked it. There's really no limit in feedback here, because I have found myself through my children that something I might have assigned to students, when you're on the end of a parent, you're like, oh, that's annoying. That's too much work, or something like, it's a different lens. So that's, if anyone would like to say anything, please don't be shy. Just unmute yourself and perhaps make it so we can see you.
Hey, Laura, it looks like you have a question in the comments from Karen saying, can you give a quick description on how to make student personal files?
Oh, you bet. Okay. So I want to show you this without showing their name. Let me go back to the slide. Okay. That's a great question. Oh, I got to share my screen. 1 second. Present now. Okay. So where did I do that? Right here. Okay. Okay, so when you go, you're going to hit material is what I did. I just hit the plus button under classwork, and you would go to material. And then actually, I got a better idea. Let's do this. I'm sorry. I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit create. Okay, I'm going to go to material and I am going to, oh, if I click here, then you're going to see all the students' names. But if I click on this drop down box, I'm going to get the list of all of the students. I'm only going to select one of them so that only one can see. So that's, and then sometimes there was no links on there as far as resources. It just said like Madeline's file, and then the student or I could upload things. So in my 5th grade class, they all write speeches, and so sometimes I was helping them with their research. One student was writing on saving pandas, and that was kind of hard to find, you know, easy to read articles. So under his file, I might upload a document that I found on pandas to help him with his research. And some kids had nothing on there. They just used it as like kind of a chat. I just made this up, like some kind of workaround that we could communicate privately. Okay. Are there any other questions? I haven't caught up with all of these comments, which I'm trying to read here. It says, Lori says assignments, materials important too. Yes, materials really important. That's why I use both of them. Allison, did you have a question or comment?
No, I was just answering Lori that sometimes Google Meet's weird, and if you can't ever find your camera or you want to check things, you can go to the 3 dots in the lower banner and double check your camera and your microphone. If you notice earlier, I got on and my camera was yellow. It's because I had the snap camera on, which makes you like a potato. Anyway, so I had to turn that off and come back in. So anyway, but I did have something to add as far as the parent thing that you were talking about. So I, have been using Google Classroom for 5 years, and since it was invented, and being a parent on the parent side is super interesting. And so my one piece of advice from the parent side is always think about your students' workflow and how they'll approach your work, especially if you teach K-3. So a great example from this spring was my third grader, by the way, has an amazing teacher, and she's kind of learning all these tools, and she's one of these people that just dives in full force, and she is amazing. I love her. And so I showed her how to do a slide deck where kind of like what you were doing, but she had one for the day. And they would just go through each slide and they would click out to links so they go out to things. The problem is that you have to remember that, number one, kids don't close tabs. Number two, every time they click on something, there's a new tab. So one day I went in to see her and she had her Chromebook open and she was working on Tuesday's slide deck and it was Thursday. Because every time she went into classroom, she would click on the new slide deck, but the old one was still open at the top of her screen. So my suggestion, if you're doing K3 or maybe even K4, really think about compacting that stuff into one, like a weekly slide deck, because especially now that we are guaranteed to be doing more remote, you're not going to have time to be right there teaching them how to close tabs. And I think that third graders would never do it anyway, even if you taught them. But anyway, so that's just my opinion, is just like, try to think of the workflow on your student side and just remember that they get crazy drowning in tabs, just like grownups do. And, we look at things from the teacher side, but always try to go to your student side. And if you have a kid, you can try things out on even better. So that's all I wanted to say.
No, that is great. My son struggles a bit with school, and he is in second grade. His teacher actually used Class Dojo, but there was a few times I had to email the teacher and be like, okay, can you just trust me that we're going to get this done, but we can't do everything you're asking, because it was too, like, she's one of my dear friends and it wasn't her fault, but it was just like tracking with an 8-year-old. It wasn't working. So we had to figure out a system for ourselves. So that is a valid point, especially for the younger students. It's very much, you need the parents to help. And if a child is lost and confused, then no one's happy. That's great. Is there any other, I'm going to go back to the chat here. Chelsea has 6 tabs. Yes, I have a lot of tabs open. Well, the other thing is, if you make it too complicated on your end as a teacher, and my system probably was leaning towards too complicated. If I had students on their private channel, then students on stream, students handing things in, but I only had 22 students and it was at the end of the year. So if we go back to remote learning, I think a lot of teachers will want to fine tune that, because we're going to be starting out with new students. They're not necessarily going to know our system. So thank you. There's so many, lots of people on here. I'm very excited. Anyone else have any questions? Chelsea, oh, thank you. Chelsea, do you want to talk about the next one then?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Laura, for sharing. Sometimes things that you feel like are so simple and not beneficial to other people are brand new information to other people. You may not be like an Alice Keeler, but you are down in the trenches using Google Classroom, all of these tools every day, and know it works for your students. So that is just the most beneficial information that we can get during this presentation. So I am going to share my screen really fast, just for a few more announcements. And if you were at the very beginning of the meeting, you saw the same announcements, and it's just a little bit of a review. There are some hyperlinks, and I will drop the presentation link in the chat right now. Please sign up for our Google group. It's a great way to connect outside of these sessions that we have, ask questions, share any professional development opportunities that you may have, or just hang out and talk to one another through the Google group. We do have professional development every Tuesday until August. Our next one, next Tuesday at the same time, will be by Tammy Morris, and she'll be sharing her favorite extensions for Chrome and Classroom. So if you'd like to join us, please feel free to sign up. In the presentation, our calendar is also linked, so you can kind of plan out and see what we have offered. Until August 4th, everything is already up and running on there. And then lastly, we are always looking for more people to present, especially our members who are local to Alaska. So if you're interested in presenting in September or beyond, please feel free to email gegalaska@gmail.com to get that set up. So thank you again for joining. I see Allison's screen is on, so I'll turn it over to Allison if she has any last minute comments.
No, you did a great job, Chelsea. Thanks for doing most of the legwork on this because I've been fishing and now I'm back in reality. You know, I think this is awesome how every week, you know, there's more people joining, and Twitter helps a lot with that. But if everybody shares with, you know, a couple people about our group, and the idea here is that the conversations are always happening, not just when I'm training somebody or I'm with the teacher. I love it if everybody's just talking about stuff, and it just makes everything so rich because you're sharing new tools. And you know, I work with my darling Karen Millington here, so we talk all the time. But I would love it if I got some other contacts that we can keep that conversation going. So this is amazing. I can't wait to see how many people are on next week. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, Allison, oops, sorry, Laura. I was just going to say that's a great point. If you enjoyed this and you're already a member of the Google group, or you're already signed up for the next event, share it with a colleague that you think will enjoy it as well, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I posted mine on Facebook and Instagram. I'm going to take it down now, but it was my last advertising because I was like, you never know. Someone might have a friend that was like, I'm so frustrated with Google Classroom. But what I was going to say is I just put the Wakelet link in the chat. So that is there now. And I'm going to put my email in that Wakelet, or I guess you have the email for this, but I can add more resources to that if people know of ones.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your night, or for those in the Philippines, the rest of your day. And hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye, guys.